A pope who walks barefoot. Is he preparing the church for a reckoning we can't yet see? What if the leader of 1 billion souls began dismantling centuries of tradition, not with fiery speeches or grand decrees, but with whispers so quiet they could slip past you? What if a pope, cloaked not in gold but in plain linen, opened sacred gardens to the homeless, asked bishops to walk barefoot on city streets, and revived the confessional as a haven for the broken? This is no hypothetical. This is Pope Leo XIV, and in just 19 days of his papacy, he's ignited a silent revolution that's reshaping the Catholic Church from its marble halls to your local parish. The question isn't just what he's doing, it's why. Is he preparing the Church for a storm we can't yet see? The world didn't notice at first. There were no blaring headlines, no Vatican press conferences with cheering crowds, no global broadcasts heralding a new era. Instead, beneath the frescoed ceilings of the Vatican, in the shadowed corridors where protocols have stood for centuries, a transformation began. It's not loud, not flashy, but it's profound, subtle enough to go unnoticed unless you're looking, yet so seismic that once you see it, it's impossible to ignore. Pope Leo XIV, once Robert Prevost, a missionary who walked barefoot with Peru's poor, is recalibrating the Church's very soul. He's shifting its posture, its tone, its heartbeat, and in doing so, he's signaling something deeper: a revival, a reckoning, a return to what the Church was always meant to be. This isn't change for the sake of optics. It's not about trending on social media or appeasing modern sensibilities. It's theological, emotional, even poetic, rooted in a life shaped by moments most would overlook. A homeless man trembling on Chicago's church steps, a Peruvian girl coughing in smoke-filled air, a woman whispering, "Today, I heard my name." These aren't just stories. They're the scars that define Pope Leo XIV, and they're guiding every decision he makes. Whether you're a lifelong Catholic, someone who left the Church long ago, or just spiritually curious, watching from the sidelines, his actions are meant for you. They're meant to ripple into your parish, your pew, your prayer life. And if you're reading this now, it's not by accident. You're part of this moment. The Barefoot Directive, a revolution in humility. It began just 19 days into his papacy, when whispers of reform started surfacing. Some dismissed them as rumors. Others watched nervously, sensing something unprecedented. Behind closed doors, in the Curia, among high-ranking bishops, and in the quiet corners of papal chambers, one word echoed: change. Not the kind crafted for cameras or public approval, but a deep spiritual shift. Subversive, symbolic, and so subtle it could slip past unless you're paying attention. His first act was a directive so startling it sent tremors through the global church. Every bishop in the world must walk barefoot in a public procession at least once a year. Not in a chapel, not on polished cathedral marble, but on the concrete, stone, or dirt roads where their people walk. To some, it sounded symbolic, even eccentric. To those who know Pope Leo, it was unmistakable. This wasn't about optics, it was about memory, rooted in a moment that scarred his soul decades ago. Before he was Pope, he was Robert Prevost, a missionary in Peru. In a remote village, a boy once ran to him, desperate for help for his sick sister. The priest assigned to the area was ill, and no one else was coming. The boy wore no shoes, nor did most of the villagers. So Robert removed his sandals, hoisted his robes, and walked barefoot through a scorching, thorn-strewn path to reach the child. His feet bled, his legs cramped, but when he arrived, a woman kissed his hand and said, Now we believe you. You came like us." That moment didn't just change him. It became the lens through which he sees leadership. "Solidarity, not status," he said then. And now he's making it a mandate for the entire church. The directive wasn't optional. Bishops were given 12 months to plan their processions. No photographers, no live streams, just a raw, humbling walk on the same streets their people tread. In Argentina, a bishop walked barefoot through a slum at dusk, silent and shoeless, as residents watched in awe. In Ghana, another knelt on a dirt path, villagers weeping as he passed. In Detroit, a bishop removed his loafers on a sidewalk outside a homeless shelter, joined by dozens of laypeople who didn't know why, but followed anyway. Not everyone embraced it. Some bishops resisted, calling it performative or excessive. One was overheard saying, "We can't be reduced to this." Another worried it might be misunderstood by the media as penance or shame. But Pope Leo's response was piercing. If we're afraid of being seen with the poor, we're already far from Christ. This wasn't theater, it was formation, a ritual relearning of humility meant to be felt in bone and skin, not broadcast for applause. The barefoot processions are a quiet ripple, forcing bishops to ask, "When was the last time I felt the ground my people walk on?" For the laity, it's a message louder than 1,000 sermons. The church is not above you, it's walking with you. And for Pope Leo, it's a reminder of the theology he learned not in seminaries, but on jagged Peruvian hills. Leadership only matters if people see you're with them, not above them. The Gardens of Mercy, a home for the forgotten. But the barefoot directive was just the beginning. Pope Leo's vision extends far beyond symbolic walks. In an act that stunned Vatican insiders, he opened the Vatican Gardens, not to tourists, dignitaries, or clergy, but to the homeless. Every evening, a small group of people sleeping in Rome's alleys or under overpasses is quietly brought into the gardens, a place often compared to Eden for its beauty and inaccessibility. No cameras, no volunteers taking selfies, just warm food, clean blankets, and the silence of dignity restored. When a Vatican official worried this might damage the image of the gardens, Leo replied, "The only image I care about is Christ," and he had nowhere to lay his head. This isn't charity for show, it's mercy in secret, a radical act of inclusion in the Sacred Heart of the Church. The gardens, where popes have prayed and cardinals have paced, are now a sanctuary for the forgotten. It's a small gesture, a few people each night, a tiny portion of the Vatican, but its symbolic weight is massive. For centuries, the Church has preached charity, but rarely has it invited the poor into its most sacred spaces. Pope Leo has changed that, and the story behind it reveals why. In 1979, as a young theology student in Chicago, Robert volunteered at a church kitchen, handing out stew to people who barely made eye contact. One winter night, after locking up, he saw a man trembling on the church steps, knees tucked into his coat, legs wrapped in newspaper. Robert didn't preach or offer food. He just sat next to him. Minutes passed in silence. As Robert rose to leave, the man whispered, "Thanks for seeing me." That moment shaped Leo's papacy. The gardens are now a place where the invisible are seen, where the Church doesn't just preach mercy, but lives it. "You don't invite people into your home to prove a point," Leo said to an archbishop who asked why the initiative wasn't publicized. "You invite them because they're family." This act, like so many of Leo's, is deeply personal, rooted in a theology of presence. He's not just opening gates, he's creating space for the suffering to find peace under the same sky, where pontiffs pray. Critics raise concerns about logistics, safety, or precedent. But Leo is unconcerned with appearances. He's concerned with presence, with a church that reflects Christ's radical welcome. The gardens, he says quietly, were never meant to be walled off like Eden. They were meant to be shared, a place where God walks with humanity. The simplicity of a servant, redefining papal authority. If you watch Pope Leo XIV in public, you'll notice something else startling: his appearance. No ornate vestments, no gold-trimmed capes, no layers of embroidered silk, heavy with centuries-old symbolism. His cassock is plain white, his cross a small wooden piece on a string, his mitre, when worn, unadorned. During a recent papal mass, he wore only a simple alb and stole, prompting a Vatican insider to ask why he chose such simplicity for a major feast day. "I don't need gold to carry grace," Leo replied. This isn't a rejection of tradition. It's a redefinition of authority. In Peru, a village girl once tugged on his patched robe after Mass and said, "You dress like our fathers." That means you care like they do. That moment has guided him ever since. As a young Augustinian priest, Robert took vows of simplicity, humility, and community. He taught with a Bible and a bench, prayed beside villagers who owned no shoes, and walked roads that left his feet calloused. Now, as Pope, he's choosing linen over lace because people are hungry for truth, not fabric. His simplicity is spreading. Cardinals are adopting plainer vestments, parishes are rethinking the balance between grandeur and gospel, and lay people are noticing a papacy that feels less like royalty and more like family. Critics whisper that this risks weakening the Church's visual majesty. Symbols matter, they argue. Robes, crosses, and rings tell a story of spiritual elevation. But Leo is telling a different story, one where presence speaks louder than prestige. During a visit to a rural diocese in Eastern Europe, he stepped off the plane in a plain cassock, a simple cross dangling from his neck. The bishop who greeted him wept, later telling reporters, "He came to us like a brother, not a ruler, and that made him feel holy." In that moment, the Church shifted from authority to accessibility, from tradition to tenderness. Leo's not abolishing grandeur. He's reminding the Church that its glory comes not from gold, but from identification with Christ, who walked to Calvary barefoot, stripped of regalia. His robes whisper what his words confirm. The Church is for souls, not spectacles. And that includes the way it speaks to God. A voice for all, rewriting the Church's language. Even the Church's prayers are changing under Pope Leo XIV. Quietly, almost invisibly, he's revised the liturgy, replacing brothers with brothers and sisters, man with humankind, and he who believes with those who believe. These aren't doctrinal shifts, but linguistic ones, designed to make the Church's voice inclusive. At first, most didn't notice. The changes appeared in revised lectionaries and liturgical guides sent to dioceses worldwide. But the ripples are profound. In Peru, a blind woman once took Robert's hand after Mass and whispered, "Today, I heard my name." He had addressed the congregation as family of God, brothers and sisters, children of every tongue and tribe. For the first time, she felt seen, not as an afterthought, but as part of the Church's story. Now, as Pope, Leo is ensuring every woman, child, and marginalized soul hears their name in the liturgy. If the gospel isn't heard by those who need it most, he wrote to bishops, it's not the gospel we're preaching. Critics call it unnecessary, even dangerous, fearing a slippery slope toward rewritten creeds. But Leo, a theologian before a reformer, sees it differently. Reverence is not repetition, he told a conservative cardinal. The Holy Spirit isn't bound by grammar. His changes are rooted in Christ's radical inclusion, dining with sinners, healing women, praising foreigners. If a woman sits in a pew her whole life and never hears herself addressed, how long before she feels unwelcome? If a child from a marginalized group hears only exclusionary language, how deeply can love take root? Young Catholics, especially in Europe and North America, report feeling alienated not by faith, but by its tone. A Chicago woman said after Mass, "It felt like the Church finally looked me in the eye." Leo's changes, small but deliberate, are making the liturgy a window, not a wall. Latin Mass and Gregorian chant remain, but in places where people feel excluded, the Church's voice is rising, not louder, but clearer. Language is power, and Leo is cleaning the glass so the light of the gospel shines for all. The Green Vatican, a theology of creation. Then there's the Green Vatican Initiative, a declaration of spiritual war, not against people or institutions, but against a mindset that treats creation as a commodity. By 2030, the Vatican will be carbon neutral. Solar panels on the Apostolic Palace, no single-use plastics, composted food waste, native trees planted, and paperless systems replacing centuries of bureaucracy. On the surface, it's environmental housekeeping. Beneath, it's a theology of creation, reaching from Genesis to Revelation. In 1992, in a Peruvian village near the Amazon, Robert saw a river run brown with silt, children coughing in smoke-filled air. A girl told him, "We can't pray under the trees anymore. They're gone." That moment shaped him. As a bishop, he funded clean water initiatives and replanted trees, not for trends, but for faith. God doesn't ask us to dominate the earth, he told a congregation, but to keep it like a promise. Now, as Pope, he's bringing that promise to global Catholicism. Some Vatican officials call it unnecessary. "We're a church, not an environmental agency," one said. But Leo sees no division. "We cannot preach care for the soul while ignoring the home that holds it," he said on May 20th, 2025. Creation isn't a backdrop, it's a character in God's story, groaning for redemption. Dioceses in Brazil, the Philippines, and Africa are launching local initiatives, planting trees, cleaning rivers, forming youth climate teams. Leo's vestments at one Mass, woven from recycled materials by indigenous women, declared that liturgy must care for the earth too. "There is no holiness in stained glass if the sky above it is dying," he said, a line now echoing in homilies worldwide. Decentralization. Trusting the village. Leo's reforms go deeper still. He's decentralizing the church, empowering local dioceses to adapt liturgies and practices to their cultures without Rome's approval. In Peru, he saw villagers worship with hymns and rituals born from their soil, thriving without Vatican oversight. "God already lives here," an elder told him. "We just listen." Now, Leo trusts bishops and communities to listen to their people. He's also created global youth councils, giving teenagers and young adults a direct voice in Vatican decisions. A 16-year-old from Ghana said, "I didn't think Rome cared what I thought, but now I know the Pope does." In his missionary days, Robert listened to youth under mango trees, promising one boy, "Maybe one day they'll ask what you see." That day has come. When the young speak with fire, Leo says, it's because the Spirit burns in them. Our job is to tend the flame. Critics fear fragmentation, but Leo sees a family, not a monarchy. The church isn't a castle, he says. It's a village, built together. trusted together. The confessional, a door to hope. The heart of Leo's papacy lies in the confessional. He's revived this sacrament, asking parishes to offer 48 hours a month of open-door confession. In Peru, a man once knelt after 30 years, asking, "Is it too late to be clean again?" Robert replied, "It's never too late." Now, as Pope, he's ensuring every soul hears that whisper. "You don't kneel in weakness," he says, "you kneel in hope." This isn't about guilt, it's about healing. In a world overwhelmed with shame, Leo wants the Church to be a hospital, not a museum. He's asked priests to train in merciful listening, to make confession visible and accessible. "We are not a museum of saints," he says, "but a hospital for sinners." Why now? A church for the coming storm. Why these changes? Why now? Some whisper that Pope Leo XIV, who wept with the forgotten and walked with the poor, knows something we don't. Is he preparing the Church for division, decline, or an unseen reckoning? His actions suggest a man who sees a world desperate for connection, where the gospel must whisper louder than tradition's noise. Critics fear risk, supporters see revival. But Leo's vision is clear. The Church must be a village, not a castle, a place of mercy, humility, and hope. If this story stirs you, share it. Someone needs to hear that it's never too late to come home. Subscribe, reflect, and ask, what is Pope Leo XIV preparing us for? This quiet revolution is just beginning, and its ripples are already reaching your soul.